So is Moses Itauma the new British Mike Tyson? Is Moses Itauma the new British Mike Tyson? Or are we all just getting carried away after an absolute, complete demolition job of Dillian Whyte? It was truly a sensational performance. So I'm going to just go through my notes first and then give you my assertions and my philosophy on what happened. So what was interesting in this fight, there was this narrative that Dillian Whyte was in great shape. Now, as I said before, there's a difference between being in boxing shape and being in fitness shape. And I gave an example and a reference point to this with the Riddick Bowe Andrew Golotto second fight, where Riddick Bowe was in better shape visually, but he wasn't in boxing shape because he could not take the punches. It would appear that despite being the lightest he's been in 10 years, so despite Dillian Whyte being the lightest he's been in 10 years, it did not look like he was necessarily in boxing shape. Since then, rumours have circulated that the camp wasn't very good. Of course, this is hindsight bias, but there was this feeling that Dillian Whyte was in shape and that he was ready and he was looking forward to the challenge. I actually stated that if this fight progresses, Dillian Whyte would have a significant chance, but I did state that if it was an early knockout, that's mostly going to go to Moses Itauma, mainly because, of course, he's got terrific power, terrific speed, but also he doesn't have the ring rust. He's been fighting regularly, and Dillian Whyte does have ring rust. But there was a prevailing narrative, particularly on the internet, that maybe Dillian Whyte can do this. Now, let me go to my notes. So basically, before the fight started, Dillian Whyte did an old pros trick. He came up second and he made Moses Itauma wait for ages. He made Moses Itauma wait for ages. Now, why did he do this? So basically, before you get in the ring, boxers like to warm up. They like to get a sweat. And by delaying the process, it's to offset, him being ready, and it's to build the nerves of the fighter. You could say it's a discourteous or a disrespectful thing to do. You could say that from Dillian Whyte's side, it's a discourteous or disrespectful thing to do, but it could be effective, particularly for a fighter that's inexperienced. And Moses Itauma, this is his first time headlining a show. So that was noticeable. Interestingly, in the ring walk, Dillian Whyte looked a bit pensive. He didn't do his howling. A lot of people pointed that out. He just looked a little bit pensive. He just looked a bit stoic, really. But it was really hard to make anything from that. So in round one, the first thing I noticed was that Dillian Whyte was getting a really low, for want of a better word, sense of gravity. He was really bending his knees. He was bending his knees a lot. To me, a little bit too low. And what I noticed is that it's almost like he had like a Philly shell, like his hand was here. So my first concern was his hand placement, because I felt like it needed to be here, but it was like alternating and he was dipping low. I felt like he needed to probably be moving more. He was moving, but then he was staying in the pot. To me, he was staying still too much. So Moses Itauma was feinting. He had that feint. And mostly he shoots the jab to the body, but this time he was shooting the straight left. He was shooting the straight left to the body. And it was good feints. And there was one particular nice motion where he threw a right hook to the head and then a straight left to the body. So it was a right hook to the head, straight left to the body by Moses. Nice punch variation. So obviously they're kind of feeling each other out. Now, there was like a three-phased attack that started the demise. So the first phase was I believe it was a feint with the right, and then a straight left to the body. The second phase was then a jab, left hook, right hook. And then the third phase, I believe, was a tap, and then a left hook, which was timed perfectly on the right hand temple of Dillian Whyte. So we kept bending down, and that was a well-placed shot, a very well-placed shot. And then from there, he varied his attack. There was lots of feinting, right uppercut, left hook to the body, and then he was going with the hooks, and it really was just he just completely overwhelmed Dillian Whyte. He was trying to, catch the shots and trying to keep composed, but he just didn't have his legs. He didn't have I think he was trying to throw a left hook counter, but he just couldn't do it. Quite sad, really. And the ref stopped the fight. In fairness to Dillian Whyte, let's give him some credit. He did want to carry on, so I don't think it's fair to say he just came for the payday. He wanted to carry on, but the referee was having none of it. And like I said, it was Moses Itauma looked ferocious. I mean, after that performance, I'm kind of sold on the hype. I mean, that was phenomenal. I mean, Dillian Whyte is a good fighter, and to take him out with that speed, precision, power, and boxing intelligence is just phenomenal. Now, of course, there's hindsight bias. Dillian Whyte wasn't in good shape. Dillian Whyte just came for the payday. We all knew that Dillian Whyte was going to lose. That's purely hindsight bias, because I was seeing a lot of comments where, like I said, Moses Itauma was clearly the favourite, but I believe some people had belief that Dillian Whyte could win, and that some people were certain that Dillian Whyte would win. So, yeah, again, hindsight bias is an amazing thing. Everyone knows everything in hindsight. So for me, what did Dillian Whyte do wrong? It's a good question. I felt like he dipped too early. He needed to move more. He did move, but he needed to move more. I noticed I actually looked at his last fight, and I noticed that there was a period where he was just weaving a lot. And you either should be moving your legs or moving your head. That's a common philosophy in boxing, for want of a better term. But the problem is, when you're weaving, you can time the shot. If someone's bending consistently to the right, you can time that shot. But if they're doing the half step back, then it's harder. So I felt like he was dipping to his right. Either you could say too early, or it was too easy to read. So I think that was a problem right there. And the hand placement, I think, was a problem, because his hands were like here. Sometimes they would come here, but that hand placement seemed to be a problem. And we needed to see more half step backs. Evander Holyfield used that effectively against Mike Tyson. He needed to be out of reach. But saying that, Moses Itauma was absolutely brilliant. He was calm. He was ruthless. He was just like an assassin. Here's an important point. There was some discussions about Buddy McGirt is clearly better than Ben Davidson, and I get it. They're both high caliber trainers. But the one thing that Buddy McGirt said, and I don't think is true, is that he said he never studies the tapes. He never watches the tapes. I think that's a bit Machiavellian. I doubt that that's true. But clearly what is true is that Ben Davidson, he's a strategist, or he's strategic. He watches the tapes. He does, his terms, the scouting reports. I'm assuming in a scouting report, you learn a fighter's good habits and you learn their bad habits. So, and when Moses directly spoke about the fight after being victorious, he stated that Ben Davidson pointed it out about, Dillian Whyte's head positioning, or, him dipping. And he stated that he saw it the first time, he saw it the second time, he saw it the third time, and then he went for it. So to me, the scouting report analyzing the data of Dillian Whyte was very effective, because that gave Moses Itauma that opportunity. Because obviously if he'd thrown the left normally, it would have gone over Dillian Whyte's head. But because they've done that proper analysis in terms of not to throw the punch where it is, but to throw the punch where it will be, that enabled him to be able to start the demise of Dillian Whyte. Now, of course, there's more to this, because in boxing there's theory and then there's application. Well, in life there's theory and then there's application. So, but we got to give Ben Davidson some credit. From my perspective, and I've said this consistently, Ben Davidson is a very good trainer. He's a very good modern trainer. By training standards, he's considered young, but just because someone's young doesn't necessarily mean that they're good or bad. And I think this was another example of his strategic approach being very effective, and we should give him credit for that. I saw another And I guess what I take from that is analyzing data or analyzing your opponent is important. Freddie Roach talks about analyzing opponents, learning their habits. Emanuel Stewart analyzes, the great late Emanuel Stewart, considered by some to be the greatest boxing trainer of all time. He would study his opponents. I believe that when they would have training camps, they would have footage of their opponents, and they would again analyze the opponents to devise a specific strategy. Adam Booth again is another strategic operator. So analyzing the data and coming up with a strategy is so important in boxing, and I feel like Ben Davidson is the epitome of that. I feel like he's quite academic in his approach, and here it was very successful. So this is another reference point for Ben Davidson. Now, of course, Moses Itauma is he's just simply an amazing talent from what I can see. Like I said, I'm pretty much sold on him. I mean, he's like a mixture of Mike Tyson and Michael Moorer and Chris Bird. It's like he just seems to have so much going for him. His punch placement was awesome. I believe when he had Dillian Whyte in trouble, he was feinting, looking for the shots and looking for the counters. So his boxing IQ is just outstanding. And like I said, he came in there with such a stoic precision. His execution was phenomenal. He couldn't have done a better job. You can't discount that performance. So we got to give him credit. Again, there's been I'm assuming that this alleged sparring knockdown rumor was either A, false, or B, actually helped him with his development. It has since come out, or it came out it came out on the day of the fight that he'd been sparring Joseph Parker, a former world champion, really good fighter, and they had apparently great sparring. And actually what's interesting, I saw a prediction video by Parker where he lost to Dillian Whyte, was predicting not only a knockout for Moses but maybe an early finish, and he would have had insider information on not just how good Moses is but how good his training camp was, because I don't think he was one of the sparring partners, but he engaged at sparring with Moses Itauma for this camp. So that was quite telling. And what a talent. And let's briefly just switch to Dillian Whyte. I actually feel quite sorry for Dillian Whyte. I consistently said beforehand that if he loses, I would have liked him to have had a competitive and a great performance, because I think he deserved that. So in that sense, it's sad. But as I presented previously, in the contract he was paid 2.5 million, and depending on the pay-per-view there's a cap of 3.5 million. So he's done really well in this fight economically, and that will, that's a nice package for him. I think he would probably be disappointed, but that's just a testament to the warrior that he is. I think it's important not to remember Dillian Whyte for this performance. It's important to remember his extensive CV. Just off the top of my head, he had an 8-round war with Anthony Joshua. He had the knockout loss, then the knockout win of Povetkin. That really stands out. And then he had the 2 wars with Derek Chisora. They were brutal. And Derek Chisora is still, he's still a significant factor in the heavyweight scene after beating Joe Joyce. So, Dillian Whyte literally fought, and of course he had the victory over Joseph Parker, who's now, on the verge of getting a title shot. So Dillian Whyte has fought them all. He's been competitive. He's beaten very good opponents, and he deserves his respect as a good world-class operator. He didn't win the title, but he was a strong contender, and on his night he would give anyone a run for his money. So hopefully people can remember the CV and they can remember what he gave, as opposed to remembering him for this performance. I think this performance is kind of like just a symbol of how great Moses Itauma could be. And I'm really blown away by a performance, but I was literally blown away by that performance. Another interesting thing, I saw a few post-fight interviews of Moses Itauma. He did actually acknowledge that Dillian Whyte hurt him. I guess when he says hurt him, no, he didn't say it hurt him. He said Dillian Whyte threw a jab to his, I think it was to his shoulder or to his arm, and that hurt. So it's not that it hurt him or dazed him, but that hurt. He did actually acknowledge that, and he acknowledged the impact of the 6-minute wait. And again, in that same interview, he acknowledged the strategic nuances, that important strategic information from Ben Davidson. I think with Moses Itauma, from what I've seen now, it's like he seems to be quite an introverted type of personality. So you've got a few things with Itauma. On one hand, he's an introverted personality, so he doesn't seem like someone who's going to trash talk, which could make his marketability difficult. However, his boxing in the ring is so ferocious that he may be able to literally sell himself to the public purely based on his performances. And in history we've seen this, like Golovkin typically was not a talker. He didn't engage in trash talk, but his performances, they just spoke for itself. And I feel that from what I've seen from Moses Itauma, he's not, I feel like it's not natural for him to be boisterous or to start a quote-unquote beef or to try and intimidate opponents. That doesn't seem to be his thing. His thing seems to be it's kind of like a bit like a Vander Holyfield type, where it's just does his graft, puts in the work, and then goes in and delivers the business. And man, he delivered the business. I mean, before, I wouldn't have even entertained the theoretical discussion of him versus Usyk. I mean, that now looks like a good fight. Now, clearly, I think that it's still way too early because he hasn't had the rounds and he hasn't had the puzzles to solve that would qualify him to fight Usyk. But I would advise for any heavyweight to stay out of the way of this guy, because he's ferocious, and because he is getting a lot of activity, because he's fighting regularly, that means he's so sharp. He's just so sharp, and he'll be a handful for any fighter. I mean, there's so many. You put him in against any top 10 heavyweight, and I think people would want to see it. You put him in with the top 3 heavyweights, you put him in with Joseph Parker, people would want to see that. Imagine him versus Tyson Fury. That would be a great fight. So Moses Itauma has a really bright future, and it's going to be so fascinating to see who he fights next, and will they be able to set up that mega fight with Usyk? I guess only time will tell. So David Adelaide and Filip Hrgović, they kind of had a bit of a war, and it was a good fight. Like, I really enjoyed that fight, and there was a lot going on. There was round 2, the cut. I think it was a cut over the right eye. That cut was nasty. And then there was the phenomenal round 8. I mean, that round 8 was absolutely incredible. I mean, you could put that up there with the great rounds of boxing. The one that comes to mind is the Vander Holyfield-Riddick Bowe round 10. It was a great round where David Adelaide was dropped, then he got up, and then he hurt Filip Hrgović with a counter left hook. So I think in this fight, Adelaide showed a lot, and Filip Hrgović, I think you got to give him immense credit, especially because he had that nasty cut in round 2, and effectively he dominated it. The fight was competitive, but clearly Hrgović won the majority of the rounds. I think that would have been a unanimous decision, but Adelaide was dangerous, and I think both fighters can take a lot from this fight. So I'm just going to briefly go through my notes, and I started taking notes from round 2. So in round 2, I had Adelaide. Again, he had that short left hook, and that short left hook was working. And he actually landed in round 2 that counter jab. That was a really good strategy. You know that Adam Booth had him working on that counter jab, and he just landed it perfectly at the end of round 2, which caused the cut. Filip Hrgović, he was like utilizing the jab, and he had a nice short left hook straight right, and that straight right was going through the target. And he was also, when they would get in the clinch, he would throw a right hand through the target, but also he was going to the body. I noticed that was probably the variation between the Filip Hrgović that fought Daniel Dubois and the Filip Hrgović of today, is that now he's got some body work, and that clearly would have been influenced by his trainer Abel Sanchez. So at the end of that round, there's a cut eye over the there's a cut eye over the right eyelid, and you're thinking, they do a close-up of the cut, and it looks absolutely disgusting, and you think they are going to stop this fight. So Filip Hrgović needs to do something. So in round 3, Adeleye is using the jab to blur the vision and measure distance, and then he lands a left hook that hurts Filip Hrgović. Oh, it's a great left hook. But generally speaking, Filip Hrgović was punching to the head, and then he would go to the body. So he was throwing combinations, and the right hand, he was punching through the target. Generally, his right hand would punch through the target, so you can punch at the target or through the target. And I think Adeleye was struggling with that, because he was moving around, but temporarily he would go to the ropes. And when you punch through the target when someone's on the ropes, you're maximizing the chances of hurting your opponent. And the short left hook from Filip Hrgović was doing some damage. But like I said, there was a great left hook from Adeleye. There was a sequence from Adeleye where he threw a short left hook, landed, and then threw a 1-2. And I felt like he should have repeated that sequence more. And then we got to round 4, and again in my notes you got, Filip Hrgović, he's throwing the double jab a lot. It's like a tap, it's bat bat, and then a right uppercut left hook, or tap tap straight right left hook. He's really utilizing his combinations, and he's using that left hook to the body, which is set up with punches to the head. And I think that left hook to the body is it's a good investment. But also what he's doing, and I really like this, generally he was shooting his right hand straight, but then he would use some variation and throw it like a hook, which obviously would hit the left side of the temple, and those punches can really take away your leg. So he was changing the trajectory. Sometimes it would come straight, and sometimes it would be a hook. And when he was throwing it straight, it was going through the target, but when he was throwing the hook, it was literally at the temple. I think Sanchez likes those temple shots. All his fighters seem to do that. Adeleye was still using the counter jabs, but this was the problem with Adelaye's performance. He had good movement, he had good counter jabs, he had a really good left hook, but there was not enough creativity. So it's throw a jab to the body and then throw a left hook, or feint with the right hand and then throw a left hook, or throw a left hook straight right and then feint with the right hand and then throw a left hook. You need to show some greater innovation to get some success. You can't just throw your left hook. You need to set it up, It's you need a different key to open that door. So in round 5, you had again, you had the good counter jab, but it was few and far between from Adeleye. And then Adeleye was pushing a lot. So he would push Filip Hrgović back. I guess that's effective, because what it's doing, it's giving you time. If you're pushing someone away, they can't punch you, and it's showing the person how strong you are. So again, that was strategic. But there was another thing that I didn't like what Adeleye was doing. He kept looking at his corner. It was he was looking at, I'm assuming he was looking at Adam Booth, and that to me is like a lapse of concentration. I don't know why he was doing that. Again, Filip Hrgović was doing that punch creativity, double jab, then the left hook, as opposed to the straight right. And then he starts throwing the left hook to the temple. So he's throwing the left hook like that. So it's to the right temple. And this is what Golovkin used to do all the time. And he would be very effective with it. He would get you on the ropes and then do it. So again, this is an Abel Sanchez influence. And he was trying the 1-2. And when he was throwing the 1-2, it was like he wasn't throwing it here, he was throwing it there. So it was really just, you know, he was punching straight through the target as opposed to at the target. So the 1-2 was working. Adelaide wasn't countering the 1-2. I was stating he needs to do something against the 1-2. Yes, he had the counter jab, but that wasn't enough. And Filip Hrgović at 1.9 did a good counter right. I think he caught a right hand and then threw a counter right. So that's good. That shows that boxing IQ, that boxing awareness. So moving into like round 6, there was good jabs from Adelaide, but he keeps looking at his corner. To me, that just says that you're confused. Like, why are you doing that? I don't get it. But then one good thing he was doing the pushing, but the one good thing he started to do was put the head on the chest. So this limits the punch target for Hrgović. And it also gives him some things to think about. But he wasn't throwing the punches. He needed to put the head on the chest and then rip to the body, body, head, body. It's like he did the phase 1 good, but where's the phase 2, where's the phase 3? And Filip was, at this point, was predominantly throwing the right hand through the target. Again, you had the double jab, straight right, and then now he was doing the double jab, straight right, left hook body, so there was some nice punch creativity, some nice punch variation, which we appreciate. And then again, he's bringing the right hook in, and he also had some interesting feints. He was sometimes feinting with the right hand. What was interesting in this round is that Adam Booth got quite emotional, and Adam Booth is like a really clear communicator. He's very concise, he's very calm, but you could see that Adam Booth was trying to rile Adelaide up, basically saying you can't win on points. So he was trying to, you know, he's trying to bring the best out of him, basically. And then in round 7, Adelaide's, you know, this is good. He's still trying the counter jab, which is good. He's trying the counter left hook, and he's pushing Filip, which is good. And again, he's putting the head to the chest, which is good, but he needs the body work. There's no body investment from Adelaide. And again, Filip Hrgović is throwing punches. He's changing the angles now. He's just picking some nice angles. He's doing some variations like jab to the body and then left hook to the head. So again, there's some punch variation. And then he introduces a 1-2-3 and then goes back to that 1-2. So the punch variations is good. And the one thing we got to give Sanchez credit for is the way he handled that cut was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, you got to give him an A+, the way he managed that cut. I thought that fight would be stopped in round 3, but big respect to Sanchez for managing the cut. In round 8, this was when it just got really good. So I think it was a double tap right hook left hook from Filip Hrgović, and then he hurts him with the right hand through the target. So he's punching the right hand through the target. He gets through. He scores a knockdown. He's going for the kill now. You know, Adelaide's clearly hurt, but then Adelaide, it's like he's always looking for this left hook counter, right? And he hits Filip Hrgović with this perfect left hook counter. And it definitely gets Filip Hrgovic's attention, and he seems hurt. And Adelaide starts throwing loads of hooks at him. He just starts going for it, and you can see, you know, he's really putting everything into the punches. And you really got to take your hat off to Adelaide, because he was in trouble. He could have psychologically quit. He could have gone into survival mode, but on the verge of nearly being knocked out, he tries to get the knockout and then nearly gets the knockout. And that round ends with Adelaide being the hunter. Gotta respect it. Adelaide's a warrior. It's as simple as that. He made some strategically there was some issues there, but strategically he did a lot of good stuff, but then there was so much more he could have done. And in fairness, Filip Hrgović stayed off the ropes, which is what I said he needed to do. So in round 9, Adelaide's trying the jab, he's on the ropes, and then he's trying to bring in the overhand right, which is good, so there's some punch variety there. But again, in my notes, I was like, where is the body work? Where's that straight right hand to the body and then left hook to the head? Where's that double jab and then left hook? There's just not enough punch creativity. And with a fighter with the IQ of Filip Hrgović, You got to introduce that punch creativity. Filip Hrgović is punching through the target, it's effective, but then he's doing little short punches as well, and his punching output, Filip Hrgovic's punching output is incredible. I mean, considering this man, I thought he had bad stamina when I looked at the McLean fight. I was like, this guy hasn't got a good, his punching engine is questionable. I don't know what what drills Sanchez has been putting him through, but his work output was phenomenal for practically every round. And then he was pushing Adelaide to the ropes, and then in round 10, still trying that left hook. He landed a lovely short right hook, Adelaide, right? So he's trying the left hook, but then he threw like a short right hook. And what it was, I think Filip Hrgović was dipping to the right, and he just timed a beautiful short right hook. At this point, Filip Hrgović is using the jab. He's throwing a short 1-2 at the target. So before his 1-2 was going through the target, now he's throwing it at the target. And he avoided a right-hand counter, which again shows good reflexes and good awareness. And he's just shortening up his punches now. And that's good boxing intelligence. He's reading the situation and he's adapting accordingly. So what can we take from this? If you're Filip Hrgović, you take a lot from it. You have overcome adversity again because you had a nasty cut. You've shown a high punch output, which we've never seen from you before. And we've got this punch creativity, which again, I haven't seen this level of punch creativity from Filip Hrgović before. So there was a lot of good stuff for him that he could take from this. You could almost argue that he punched too much. You could say maybe he could have slowed down the fight, maybe he could have controlled it more with the jab. Did he have to engage so much? Because when you throw more combinations, that means you're inviting more counter opportunities. This is why fighters like Vladimir Klitschko would be primarily with the jab and with the straight right hand. They would limit your opportunities to get counter punches. Here's a reference point. Go look at Klitschko's earlier fights where he would throw a lot of punches. He would double up, triple up his left hook, and then he would go through the phases. And then look at his later fights when he was the dominant, undisputed champion. You would see that he can control the tempo. So you could maybe make that criticism, but I don't think Sanchez is that type. Abel Sanchez is not that type of trainer. But Abel Sanchez has done a great job with him and has implemented his style on Filip Hrgović, who implemented that style really well. The bodywork was good, the investments was good, and he overcame adversity. You've got to give it to him. He still has that confidence. Now from David Adelaide, there's a lot you can take from the fight as well. He implemented the counter jab really well. The left hook was good. His bravery is beyond approach. He was a warrior in there. He really showed that he's made of certain stuff. He has what they call a heart. In boxing they say, have you got heart? And he has heart, a warrior. So that he could take that from the fight. And he did certain things good. He moved around the ring well. The counter jab was good. The pushing him was good. The head on the chest was good. But there needed, from my perspective, I think there needed to be more punch creativity. Where was the feint and then the overhand right? Where was the double jab, straight right, left hook? Where was the feint with the right, left hook? I mean, where was the left hook to the body, left hook to the head? Like, I was expecting more punch variety from Adelaide. This doesn't suggest that he didn't work on that, because sometimes you can work on loads of different punch variations, but you get in the ring and either your opponent has nullified what you're doing or you simply just revert back to what you're used to. But Adelaide can take a lot from the fight, but there's also things for him to improve on. Punch creativity. His punch output needs to be better. You got to throw more punches. But his power, that's another thing that shocked me, is his power. Filip Hrgović has a good chin, but in his post-fight, he basically indicated that, I don't think he directly said it, but he indicated that Adelaide may be I think he made reference to his heart, but indicated that he may be the hardest puncher that he fought, or that at least he was a harder puncher than Daniel Dubois. And Daniel Dubois is considered a devastating puncher. So clearly Adeleye is developing this left hook power, and that's, you know, that's promising. I really feel that if Adeleye could just introduce that punch creativity, could up his work rate and could adapt, if he could show the ability to adapt mid-fight, I think he could really be a serious contender, and on his night he could give anyone a hard day's work. But it's back to the drawing board for him. He can come back. There's a lot of talent there, and he's got, imagine, you could have all the tools in the world, but if you haven't got the heart, then it's not going to work. So, you know, I think you can salute both fighters. Salute Filip Hrgović for coming through adversity in round 2 from the cut and in round 8, and salute Adeleye for his bravery and, you know, coming back in round 8 from nearly being stopped. And also got to give respect to Abel Sanchez. He's taken Filip Hrgović from a defeat, and he's turned his career around with 2 good victories. And he's taken a fighter that had bad stamina, and now he's got great stamina. He can throw loads of punches. He's introduced, or he's given him now, he's introduced bodywork to his punching palette, for want of a better word. He's also got new punching angles, so now he's throwing that left hook to the temple. And also what Abel Sanchez has shown is that Filip Hrgović is prone to cuts, but Abel Sanchez has shown that not only is he a really good boxing trainer, he's really good at managing cuts. So I think all camps can take a lot of positivity from this fight.